Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Hubbard. I am here with Mr. Curry Varner. We are going to have a discussion. I'm going to ask him some questions about his heart transplant. This is related to the Torch Challenge that we've been working to donate for the last several weeks. This really does make a difference, and we have a living, breathing example of that right here with Mr. Curry Varner. So, Mr. Curry Varner, can you tell me a little bit about your story and what led to receiving that heart transplant?
I got married on August 22nd of 2015. Um, we ended up going to Tampa, Florida for our honeymoon. And that very first night that we were down there, or afternoon we were down there, uh, we decided to go play putt-putt golf because weirdly enough, on that particular day, everything else was closed in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
But we got about halfway through the course, and I suddenly began having severe chest pain, trouble breathing. I felt like I was going to pass out at any moment. It was a moment that I truly felt like I was dying. And, something most people don't know about me is I'm also a paramedic. I've been a paramedic for 16 years now. So I was, working on the ambulance at the time. And for me to have that feeling of, oh my gosh, something's happening. Am I dying? Is this a heart attack?
Right.
What is it? Was pretty significant for me. Found a local hospital. They did some normal cardiac testing on me, and had a suspicion that I had what's called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy.
Okay.
And they then confirmed that with a echocardiogram. Essentially, what hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is when the left ventricle of your heart, over time, begins to thicken, and the heart enlarges itself. From there, I spent all but one day in the hospital.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I did get to enjoy one day before we had to leave, which really kind of, I mean, I'm glad I got to spend my honeymoon with my wife by my side. Not really exactly the way we wanted to go about it, but when we got home, I started following a cardiologist. And then my daughter, my youngest daughter, was born on November 27th. The only reason I mention that is the symptoms really began to start on December 3rd, so only 6 days after my daughter was just born. I was actually at work, working on the ambulance. My partner and I had just got back from a call, and it was nothing strenuous at all, and began having those symptoms again. From there, thank God, working in the medical field, my partner and my boss were like, you're going in, you're getting this checked out, because they were aware of what had happened. It was during that admission that we also found out that I was having issues with abnormal cardiac rhythms. So for people who don't know, our hearts beat in different rhythms. Most generally, everybody is in the same rhythm, which is normal sinus rhythm. And I began having periods of time where I'd have what they call runs of VTach, or ventricular tachycardia, which is an unstable rhythm. It's something that can cause you to go into cardiac arrest at any point in time. From there, I ended up, getting a pacemaker and defibrillator implanted. I had that for approximately about 6 months, and the wound never completely healed. It actually got infected, and I went into sepsis, which is a pretty severe infection that went down to the heart, which caused more issues. They removed that device, and then while treating the sepsis, I had to wear what they called a external automatic defibrillator. Basically, it's like a vest. It reminded me of like a bulletproof type vest that's connected to a box, and I had to wear it at all times. And if it went off, it gave you about a 3-second warning, and
Wow.
yeah. By this point in time, I'd also been referred up to Northwestern Hospital in Chicago, which actually is it's the third in the nation for heart transplants.
Oh, really?
Number one in Illinois, and it actually has a remarkable cardiac program that many transplant centers and other hospitals follow throughout the United States. My heart, the thickening increased pretty rapidly. So I started out at what was considered like a mild, high mild for the thickening. And then when it came down to being actually hospitalized to wait for the heart, I was in severe end stage of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy.
Wow.
I was actually listed on the transplant list January 2nd of 2017. They wanted to keep me in the hospital at that point, but I had a newborn at home. Well, she wasn't a newborn at that time, but I still had a family to support, and I'm the type of person that I want to make sure that I do everything I can for everybody else before I do it for myself, which isn't always the best thing.
No.
So I continued to work until I couldn't, which was, finally May 17th is when I really said to myself, it was Mother's Day weekend. Anytime I would stand up, I'd pass out, just severely ill. And I finally said to myself, you're gonna die. If you do not get this taken care. Yeah. I mean, what you're doing now, is great, but you got to put yourself first and get the procedure done that you need.
Right.
So I was admitted May 18th of 2017. As soon as I got there, they rushed me in, did an emergency intra-aortic balloon pump placement, which basically the balloon pump, what it is it sits inside your heart, and it's exactly just that, a balloon that fills up, has an opening in the middle that allows blood flow to go through, and it just beats each time with your heart. So automatically, just with that, I felt instant relief.
Awesome.
And then ended up having 5 of those balloons rupture on me. The last balloon rupturing on the day that I found out I was going to be receiving my heart. Received my heart transplant June 6th of 2017.
Wow. That's quite the journey. I can't imagine that wrestling that line, do I provide for my family now at risk of not being there in the future?
Mm-hmm.
Or, that's just be an impossible decision.
It truly was.
How did receiving the transplant change your life?
Well, first and foremost, I'm here. I'm alive. It changed my life in so many different ways. It's allowed me to, be there for my family, to be there, see my kids, do different things.
Right.
For example, just this past weekend, I watched my daughter's first dance competition, and the thought of that I might not have been here had I not received the gift that I did. Truly amazes me.
And transplants are rare, right? Not everyone gets a transplant.
No. About 1 in 10 individuals receive a heart who are actually listed on the heart transplant list each year.
That's not high at all.
No.
Wow, man.
It has also, in addition, allowed me to come here to Southview to meet all of the wonderful teachers that are here, the staff, especially the students. Not only my own students, but all the other students throughout the school that I get to interact with. It's also, in addition, I still continue to work as a paramedic, not full-time like I used to, but it's another thing that I think of is the countless number of lives that I've saved just since, my own life was saved.
Right.
there's just so many different things I could say about how it changed my life, and it would never truly be the end of what I could, but it, in so many different ways, it's opened my eyes and my heart, my new heart,
Literally,
yeah, to seeing the bigger picture of what life is truly about.
That's awesome. Can you briefly describe what it's like? Like, what is the process of having a heart transplant? I can imagine it's not simple.
No. So the process began, at least for myself, and generally this is how it happens. Once your doctor has determined that, you're kind of at that point where we need to figure something out, as far as placing you on the transplant list, there's a series of things that have to be done, such as blood work. My initial transplant blood work evaluation was a total of 28 blood tubes.
Ooh.
Yeah. Ooh. It seemed like she just kept changing them out.
Oh my goodness.
In addition to MRI of my heart, ultrasound, there was quite a few different tests that had to be done. Ultimately, then so that could be presented to a specialized board that comprised of not only the transplant team, different nurses, members of UNOS, which UNOS is an organization that regulates organ transplant in the United States, as well as usually there's at least one or two individuals who have had a transplant themselves.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Who review all the data, not just the medical data, but looking at my life, my job, everything to make sure that I'm a suitable candidate to receive the heart.
I imagine that like not any heart can go into any person.
Correct. It has to be specific to your blood type, and then there's an antigen type, and there are a lot of different factors that go into it.
That's got to be hard though to be on that board.
Yeah,
to make those decisions, those life-changing decisions.
It truly, I can only imagine. Yeah. I know it was hard for me, knowing that my life was in 12 other individuals' hands.
Yeah.
But I can only imagine how it was for them, knowing that, is he someone that we think this heart will truly benefit?
So you were selected. You were picked.
I was. I was selected. Was last listed on the transplant list January 2nd of 2016. Like I said, and then received the heart on June 6th of 2017.
Wow.
I have two specific moments that stand out to me the most. One was when I found out. My balloon had just ruptured. They were trying to decide whether or not we were going to go do one. And the doctor came in and said, I think we're going to hold off on, replacing the balloon for right now. I'm thinking, but that's kind of what's keeping me alive.
Right, yeah, right.
He's like, well, the heart became available, and I think it's a good fit for you. Awesome.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of stood there, and I'm like, wait, go get it. And he's like, well, you have to physically say yes, that I accept it. And I didn't know that at the time.
Oh, really?
Well, I'm like, yes, absolutely, go. I accept it. Whatever you need me to sign, just go.
Right.
But the more impactful moment that I remember is that night. Prior to surgery, I remember FaceTiming my children. They were at home, and just talking to them, telling them, how much I miss them, how much I love them, and those last few moments before going into the OR, telling my wife that I loved her, and not knowing whether or not this would be the last time that I was talking to them.
Yeah.
I'd actually recorded 2 separate videos prior to it, when I had a moment, that one was for my family and one was for my wife, in case I didn't make it out of the OR. And that was truly one of the hardest moments of my life to have to do. but I thank God every day that I never had to show those to them.
Yeah.
And the transplant team that I had was just phenomenal.
That's great.
If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here.
Well, that kind of wraps up our interview. Thank you so much for talking to us about the process and your journey. And I can say for myself and for many of the students and staff that get to interact with you on a regular basis, we're glad you're still around, and we're glad that you were able to get that transplant. Sorry, I've been a little choked up myself, but we really appreciate your investment into the school and into the community as a paramedic. And I just wanted to say to the kids out there that are watching, here is an example of someone who had so much to go through and came out on the other side and is still giving of himself to his community. And that is an example of a man that you should emulate, that you should seek to become someone who is as giving, even in the point of receiving a transplant. He is still giving away. And that alone deserves so much respect. On that note, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for your kind words.
I didn't want to make you cry.
It's a hard topic, and I hope that this helps open just at least one person's eyes to why this challenge is so important, why these things that they do are so important.